What is up, y'all? Welcome back to, I'm pretty sure this is the 4th episode. I have to say, these weeks come so quick. I turn around and it's time to film again and time to upload. So I'm so excited you're here. If you're new here, my name is Faith Drew and I am your host on the Radiantly Free podcast. And this week has been so busy. I feel like I have been running all over the place and I've got to get back in order. But we actually went skiing last weekend. I don't know if y'all have ever been skiing before, but I had not. And they were like, oh, you could take these classes before, that way you kind of get a feel for it. And I'm like, no, I don't need this class. I was an athlete. Like, I'll figure it out. No. We go up like to this first hill. We had gone with my grandparents and my 2 uncles, and we're on this hill. I'm at the top of it. I had barely gotten off of the lift. Let's start there. Like, we're just grateful that I got off of that. I pretty much ended up having to scoot down the whole way because I could not stand up to save my life. So it was just a miserable experience at first. I hated it so much because it was like, I've never been so bad at something in my life. Like, I'm bad at top golf. I'm horrible at golf, unless it's like mini golf. That made me look like a professional skiing. I mean, golly, horrible. So I kind of took a break. And I was just like, I'll just go tubing. So I went tubing with my younger brother and my sister and parents while my brother, uncles, and grandparents were still skiing. And I was like, I'm not doing it again. I'm like, this is so bad. My back hurts, my knees hurt, my hips hurt, everything just hurts. I'm not doing it again. We went back into the lodge after tubing. I was just like, you know what? We're here. This was our Christmas present from my grandparents. I'm like, I am going to make it worth it. I'm going to at least try again and see if I can figure it out. So I went up with my uncle and my grandma and my brother. Praise the Lord. My uncle was able to help me. I was able to get my feet under me. Finally, at the end of the day, I was able to go down the whole entire slope without falling. So I cannot even begin to express to you how happy and excited I was. And this is not what our podcast is about, but just as a gentle reminder, just because something may be hard and you don't immediately get it at first does not mean that it is not worth trying. I'm so grateful that I did not give up trying to ski because I ended up loving it so much that I want to go back. Whereas had I just gone off my first impression of how hard it was, I never would have realized how much I actually like doing it. So just throwing it out there, if you go skiing and it's horrible, just try again. Just get someone to help you. I would highly advise taking the class. Definitely should have done that. But anyway, here we are, and I love skiing now. So that is something that we learned over the weekend. We're kind of in full swing of my siblings playing basketball and volleyball, so we've just been so busy with that. But luckily, we are here, and we are so ready for this. I'm excited for this one because, let's be real, I'm excited about all of them. And I'll probably say the same thing every time. But I know last week we talked about, like, what if I don't know God's plan for my life? And if you haven't seen that one, definitely go back and watch it. And I sort of decided to piggyback off of that one and go in a little bit deeper of, even if you might have your plans settled right now or you think you know what you're going to do, have you asked yourself, what is deciding my plans? This one's rough for me because I don't really like facing, what's deciding my plans, Because normally if I'm like, it's my emotions or it's this or it's that, I probably don't really think that's the best motive to make that decision. In 2022, I made the decision that I was going to move to Texas, and which isn't a bad decision. I love Texas, don't get me wrong. But I had just come off of my first semester of college and I hated it. It was horrible. I didn't like the environment. I was just like, this is just not for me. And I didn't have a job. I'd only ever worked part-time jobs before. But in my head, I was like, okay, I'm going to move to Texas and I am going to juggle relationships and working full-time. Oh, and I'm going to go to school. I'm also going to go to school to be an esthetician while I'm down there. I was not prepared. I should not have made that decision as quickly as I did. I went down there and it was not what I thought it was going to be. I quickly realized that mentally and emotionally, I was not prepared to have to juggle all of that because I had never juggled that much before in my life. And rent is expensive, so I was just all over the place. Coming back home, because it didn't work out, but that's fine. God had a plan and we are better for it. I realized that I hadn't even asked myself, why are you making these decisions? And if I had, I was definitely not honest with myself. Looking back now, I realize that I should have asked myself from the very beginning, why are you doing this? If I was honest with myself and actually was able to have a good idea of why I was making that decision, I feel like I could have faced the challenges and the things coming a lot easier. I realized that me moving to Texas, while yes, it wasn't necessarily inherently bad, I was making those decisions out of emotions and was in no way, shape, or form ready for everything that would entail. Because I was running off of so many ideas and plans that weren't necessarily correctly structured because of the fact that they were based on my emotions. Everything was just falling through. I was trying to find jobs that would pay me enough that I could live on my own, but also trying to find jobs that were flexible enough for me to also go to a full-time day class, while also trying to prioritize my evenings because of relationships and friendships and things. And so I was like, okay, this is not working. And it was because realistically, while yes, the idea of being an esthetician was a good idea and it's something I think that I would enjoy, it truly wasn't my heart's desire. It wasn't really at the bottom of my being what I truly wanted, because I've always wanted to do ministry. I've always wanted to actively help people and do something that I felt like had just an extreme purpose. Of course, being an esthetician has its own purpose and you can impact people and you can make that your ministry. But for me, it was not that burning heart's desire, and I knew that that's not what God had called me to long term. And so because of that, I was just like, okay, I had added something on my plate just so that I could look like I had it all planned out and figured out, because I didn't want to be, 20 years old and moving without a direction, because I had just decided I didn't want to go to college and I needed something else. Like I needed something that gave me a career. I did it because I worked at Chick-fil-A, and don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not where I wanted to be my whole life. And again, I just found myself in this constant turmoil of, if I had just been honest with myself of like, okay, I want to move to Texas and I'm just going to get a job and settle for a while, and that's my priorities. If it's relationships and my job, that's my priority, and maybe later I'll do school, or maybe I won't because it's not truly deep down what I want, maybe then all of this stuff would have worked out. But because of the fact that I didn't do that, I set myself up for failure, because I realized that a lot of the decisions that I was making was just so other people would view my life as put together and working out and moving forward, because it's what I thought other people would think was successful, or think that I was accomplishing things or making something of myself. I go through all of that to say I feel like there are some really important questions that you can ask yourself before making decisions, especially life-altering decisions, whether it's moving or going to a different college, or maybe it's switching your major or getting into a new relationship. Whatever it is, I feel like there are some questions that you can ask yourself. This is not an exhausted list. Like, you could ask yourself probably 100 more questions. So I challenge you to find some questions that you can ask yourself that kind of help you understand the why behind my what. The questions that you should ask yourself are: question number 1 is, does this line up with who God has called me to be? Now, I feel like you have to put it into perspective of, maybe you, like me, knew that your deep down God-given desire was to be in ministry. I want to say this: you can make any position in life that you're in ministry. Don't ever feel discouraged because you don't necessarily feel like God has told you to be a pastor or to be a missionary or whatever it may be. My grandparents have had huge successful businesses, but they are all in ministry. My grandpa will go to business meetings and talk about Jesus. So don't feel like just because you don't have this church title or this ministry position, it doesn't mean that your spot in life is not ministry. So I meant specifically in this is what I want my full-time job to be. I knew that, but I didn't necessarily think it was the most glamorous job. And I was definitely in the mindset of like, oh, well, I'm sure I can do ministry too, and I can, work full-time during the day. I was trying to replace what I knew God had called me to, do. So I definitely feel like you have to ask yourself, does this line up with who God has called me to be? And maybe, again, if you want to revert back to the last podcast episode, maybe you don't know what God has for you. And you can still ask yourself, okay, does this line up with who He calls me to be, as far as am I upholding my character and my virtues, and am I chasing after Jesus? I actually had this as my screensaver for a long time, but half of it was, okay, God's voice is calm and peaceful, and it is not chaotic, but then Satan's voice causes anxiety and chaos and confusion and frustration. There were a bunch of them. I love how God is so good in every little detail that you can be like, okay, God, does this bring me peace? Does this push me to be better? Does this line up with your word and your heart? You can put yourself in a position where if you say, no, this does not line up with who God has called me to be, then you can be like, okay, this isn't the decision for me. Or maybe it's, this doesn't go against what God has called me to be, and I am setting myself up for success, and I have a plan. Make sure you have a plan. You always need a plan. Move forward that way, knowing, okay, I am walking in a direction that I believe God has called me to be, that lines up with who He says I am, that is pushing me forward. And that also leads into, are you at peace? Like, in your core, in your spirit, are you at peace? I was actually just at a service, and the pastor was talking about how, we have a constant battle of our spirit and our flesh. And if there is a lot of chaos going on in your life, there's some fighting going on. There's some rubbing going on. If you feel like there's just so much chaos and you're not finding peace in a situation, then I would really implore you to go on your knees in prayer and just ask God, like, okay, I am not sure what is going on, and I need you. I need you to come and be a part of this situation and me making this decision. And my friend Nicole, actually, I was asking her advice on some things, and she said one of her go-to prayers is like, God, if this is not from you, Lord, just please don't let it work out. Pray that prayer. And I know that that's a scary prayer, especially when you're hoping for something, because you can still hope for things that are not what God wants you to do. And you can even know that it's not what God wants you to do, and you can still be disappointed that it didn't happen. And that is okay. Say that prayer. It's a scary prayer to be like, okay, God, if this isn't from you and this is not what's best for me, I don't want it. So, just take it away, because most of the time we don't want it to be taken away. If you truly feel like you can rely and trust on God, then ask Him that question. Ask Him to lead you and guide you and direct you. And I want to say too that just because something is hard does not mean that you lack peace or that it's not from God, because there are things that we have to work for that are hard, that we have to put lots of hours and lots of time and lots of effort to accomplish them. That's why you have to look deep in your being and just be like, okay, am I at peace? Or does this feel like chaos? Even when it's hard, am I still at peace? Even when I'm struggling or emotional, do I still feel like this is what I'm supposed to do? And you can kind of navigate through those decisions, asking God and looking in yourself of like, okay, am I at peace? Do I truly have a comfort and a knowing that this is where I'm supposed to be right now, regardless of what comes my way and what is thrown at me. Now, to kind of play into this whole entire podcast episode is ask yourself, are there any influences that could be influencing your decisions? Could it be a boyfriend, or could it be your family, or your pressure to live up to something, or what someone else has thought of you, or your friends, or maybe people that you don't like? There have been times where I wanted to do something just simply to prove that I could, to show someone else. Like, it was a pride thing sometimes. Like, I played volleyball. There are people that just rub you the wrong way. You find yourself in some competitions with some other girls, and you're like, okay, I'm going to be better than you, or I'm going to go further than you, or whatever. Might not be verbally spoken, but it's just this unspoken. If you're an athlete, I feel like you kind of have an idea of what I'm talking about, whether from other people you saw or yourself. But I found myself making certain decisions just because I wanted other people to see, like, oh, I made it to play volleyball in college. I made it on the national team. It hit me one day and I was like, golly, I do not want to live my life based on what other people think about me. So kind of look at your outside surroundings, and there are good influences. And I'm not saying that all influences are bad, but good or bad, I think you should address them and you should be aware of them. Be like, okay, is the person who's influencing me for the better, or for personal gain, or because I'm insecure and trying to prove something to them? Whatever it may be, take a step back and be like, what is influencing me? What is having a hold that can sort of dictate this next step in my life? As you walk into your next steps of life or your next decisions, don't let fear hold you back, because fear likes to creep in almost any time there's change. Change is scary. It's an unknown. Don't feel like just because you're fearful of something, or that it might make you nervous, that it's horrible or it's not for you. But also don't discount that, if you're super terrified of something, again, bring it back to God's feet and just ask God, like, what do you have planned? What is the best thing for me? I'm fearful right now, but is this because I'm stepping into something that you want me to, or because I'm stepping further away from you, or into something that's going to lead me down a wrong path? So don't let that fear of the unknown stop you from moving into the unknown, because there is so much beauty in that unknown. Like, whenever I was skiing and I decided, you know what? I was really bad at it, but I'm going to try again. I don't know how it's going to go. It might be just as bad. And I was actually a little bit scared that I was going to fall and hurt something, because I had already hurt my knee and my hip and my back. And I'm like, okay, I've only been out here for an hour and a half. I do not want to hurt myself. But I did not let that fear steal my opportunity. And that opportunity ended up bringing me so much joy. It's probably going to bring me joy later, because I know now I love to ski. Might not be the best at it, but I love doing it. And so do not let that fear hold you back from an opportunity. You have to be able to take action. I have found myself in positions where I have been sitting on my couch being like, okay, God, I'm waiting on you to send it to me in the mail, or I'm waiting on you to send it to me and put it on my doorstep. It's like, girl, you have to get up off your couch. You have to get out of your comfort zone. You have to take action and move forward. You have to pick yourself up and be like, okay, this is what I want. I have a peace in this. I know that this is something that leads me closer to God and that is pushing me to be better and moving my life forward. I'm going to take action. I'm going to take that step. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it when I see other girls who have been in the positions where I've been, where they are not willing to take a step, and they're just like, okay, I'm waiting on God, but I'm not doing anything with it. I cannot encourage you enough to take that step into that next thing, just to see, because you might take a little bit of a step and it doesn't work out. You can realize that every decision we make creates the story of our life, and just because something doesn't work out does not mean it was useless. It just means it's a part of your story and it led you closer to where you're supposed to go. Now, do not be making bad decisions expecting that it'll work out later. No, I'm not saying that. But you can realize too that God gives us desires, and He gives us certain talents for a purpose, and He wants us to use them. I definitely think that you all should go and read this story of the 5 talents, because whenever you read this story, you can see that it is a representation of when God gives us talents and abilities, He wants us to go out and use them. He doesn't want us to just bury them away. He doesn't want us to just hide them away from others. He wants us to use them, whether it's singing, or maybe you're good at speaking or fixing things, or you're good at leading people. Whatever it is, He gave you those talents because He wants you to use them. He wants you to use your gifts. He wants you to impact the people around you because He decided that you should have that gift. And what is a gift that you never use, that just sits on your counter, or you bury it and don't use it? What's the point? And so He wants you to use those gifts that He's given you. And so I encourage you today also that if you have a gift that is bubbling inside you, to use it. Maybe you like to sing. Maybe that terrifies you, but what if you were just like, hey, I'm gonna try to be a backup singer at church, and just take a step to use that gift and watch how using that gift can grow and multiply, and you can see the fruit from using what God has given you. All that to say, I want to come back around to ask yourself, what is deciding my plans? Is it God? Is it my emotions? Is it things going on around me or people around me? And whenever you start to pinpoint, okay, this is what's deciding it, then ask yourself those questions, maybe that you came up with or the ones that I gave you today, and be like, is this truly the best decision for my life? Is this the best place for me to go? Is this truly what I desire? While yes, you can make those decisions and God redeems, I feel like it causes so much less pain whenever you ask God in advance, not when it's over. Be like, okay, God, where do you want me to go? And it can save you a whole lot of pain if you just align yourself with what God has called you to do and what He has planned for you. So that is my encouragement to you today and what I have to say. I'm so glad that you're here. If you want to follow on Instagram, it's under Radiantly Free, where I post all of the updates and different things going on. So definitely go over there. It honestly just blesses my heart to see and get feedback from you all. So I pray that you all have a great week and a happy Thursday, and I will see you all next time.